Hey everybody, Haitian Homie here, and I'm back. It's been a while, but to kind of ease back into the content now that we are in the off season, I figured I'd take a look back at kind of what started the whole YouTube thing in the first place, which was my power rankings that kind of popped off a little bit. I think they ended up on Reddit or something, and people ended up coming to my channel, and maybe that's why you're still watching this. So I figured I would go back and kind of rewatch to see what kind of Pepega takes I had. I've watched a little bit of it, but not the whole thing, and I haven't watched part two. So I do know that some of my takes were right, some of my takes were wrong. We're going to talk about them. So I'm going to dive in, kind of pause, and talk about it from time to time. But yeah, I've got the captions on as well, just in case you can't hear the audio, because I'm trying to balance that audio and my mic. So this is a little bit scuffed, but we're getting back into content, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm excited.
So I'm going to actually skip through. I basically said...
two videos where I'm going to split them.
Yeah, I split the teams by like bottom five, next five, top five. I didn't do this team is number 20, this team is number 19. I did it by quartiles because I thought it would be too hard to tell. So, here we go.
But someone's got to lose. And starting us off in no particular order is going to be the Florida Mayhem. I don't think they've gotten better. That's the problem.
Yeah.
There, is that when you look at their roster,
yeah,
they've gotten rid of some players, but they haven't really signed anyone that's proven to be any better. Right? They got rid of Logix. I don't really know why, because I didn't think he was the problem. I thought it was a tank play problem. I thought he was a great DPS, but
I still think that.
Put him down in contenders.
I mean,
I guess
even when you're talking about Logix moving over to the Defiant, he was one of the only bright points there, even when Season 2. So I still don't think that Mayhem should have gone full Korean. Maybe? I don't know. That's a hard topic, but I don't think Logix was the problem. But yeah.
They wanted to, but I unfortunately don't see that happening. Long story short,
come on.
A lot of the other teams have gotten better. And even the ones who haven't gotten better and have stayed stagnant, well, so have the Mayhem. And they were already bad. You have a lot of expansion teams coming in who are just gonna be better right out of the gate. I just don't think the Florida Mayhem have made any solid improvements that take them out of the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
Right. I just don't see them moving up any higher than they were.
I called that
season,
one,
which is unfortunate, but that's just where I see them in the 16th through 20th rankings.
Called it.
Next up, we're gonna take a look at the Boston Uprising. Now, maybe this one is a surprise for some people. And maybe for some people it's a flashback, deja vu to about this time last season, because a lot of preseason rankings for Season 1 had the Boston Uprising near the bottom. And this is for completely different reasons than last year. Last year it was because people didn't think they had the names, right, that they didn't have the experience.
Right.
This year it's because, well, they had the experience and it wasn't great. And you say, well, they made stage playoffs and they had an undefeated stage. They were the only team to do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then look at the second half of their season. Right, in the second half of the season, the Boston Uprising fell apart. And it was a management issue, so it seemed. Their really successful coach, Coach Krusty, left them and headed over to the San Francisco Shock, who, coincidentally, started doing a lot better.
That is true.
Boston Uprising did a lot worse. The coach that was left, Coach Huck, it seems like he's not a great leader.
Wait a minute, whoa, hold up. First Pepega take, I thought Huck was a coach. He's the GM. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not really going to talk to this because I'm sure you can understand why. I guess my take, what was my take? What was even my take?
Past few months, that players have been unhappy, that they've been requesting trades, that they just haven't gotten along with the management.
So it was like a team culture thing.
Is causing problems in game. That's part of the reason why they started to struggle.
I thought there was a team culture problem.
Season. And unfortunately, a lot of that management is still there. And they've gotten rid of some of their star players, like Stryker. I was amazed when they let him go. And so, similar to the Mayhem, yeah, they've had some signings. Most notably, Alamau and Fusions. Fusions, I'm really excited to see him because the underdog story of the British World Cup team was just awesome for me.
Still like Fusions. Good.
He got some
I like
attention.
It.
I think his tank play is going to be fantastic, by the way. Love this guy. But other than
I was right about that.
Alamau, I really don't think that the team has gotten stronger, and I'm not sure that the management is going to be enough to get them through. So that's why I've got them in this bottom 16 through 20.
Okay, so I guess, I mean, if you want to talk like the players thing, I said that they didn't have like the names or whatever. I mean, I didn't know that Color Hex was gonna pop off, and Blase also popped off when he had the chance. Like, especially stage 4 rolled around. It definitely wasn't a player issue, I don't think. And I can't really speak to what happened behind the scenes because like I wasn't really there for most of it. But it is true. I mean, they didn't have a head coach. The Boston Uprising did not have a head coach for the 2019 season. So I guess when I said there was management issues, I guess I was thinking Huck was the coach, but in reality they didn't have a head coach. So I don't know what I was thinking. But 2020 looks good. We have a head coach. We have a new assistant coach. It's cool stuff. I'm excited. But I guess in a weird way, I kind of called how 2019 ended up before
even though the players might shine, I just don't think that the management is going to give them.
And the players did shine when they had the chance. There were some pop-off moments.
To focus completely on their game. That's unfortunate for the players, but that's just what I see. Next up, we've got the Toronto Defiant. Now, I love their branding. It's edgy, it's cool, it's kind of, dark, urban, whatever. But that doesn't get you wins, right? So here's the problem. I have two problems with the Toronto Defiant. The first problem is that they're pulling from a bunch of different organizations.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled Envy from the Valiant. They pulled Asher from the Gladiators. They pulled Neko from the Uprising. And then they pulled Contenders players from multiple teams. The problem here is that you don't have a base. Nobody has any synergies, right? And now you're going up against a lot of teams like, for example, the Fusion or the Spitfire, who they did really well in Season 1, and they haven't changed up their rosters a ton, so they already have this synergy. They've been working together for over a year. Now you're putting a team together, having them practice for a few months, and hoping for the best. And even some of the other expansion teams have bases of 4 players or so who worked together in Contenders and came up. But that's not what you're seeing here. So my first problem is you're starting with a bunch of players who've never played together, sticking them together. Second problem is none of...
So, to speak to that point, I was kind of right, kind of wrong, because I still believe that having a base for your players is a good move, but then you see other teams where they just hand pick, like pick here from pick from there, and it works out. I mean, namely, you could say something like the Gladiators to an extent, you could say like the Shock, and that's where your management and your coaching comes into play. So I think for the Defiant, what happened was they ended up with neither. And that's a whole story in and of itself. But what happened was they didn't have players who had synergies, and you didn't have the coaches to help build those connections. So you had neither synergy nor the coaching. I think you have to have one or the other, and they had neither. So,
them were particularly
I guess successful. I called that.
I mean, sure, the 2 LA teams did fairly well in the first season of Overwatch League. They both made it to the playoffs. The Uprising had, as we talked about, some spotty success. But these Contenders players, most of them were not really successful. They weren't on successful teams. They weren't on championship winning teams. They were just middle of the pack.
Also
and
maybe
true. These are the star players from those teams, but you don't have a history of success. So maybe these individuals...
this roster's already getting blown up in the offseason.
That's a big question mark. There's no existing synergy, and I'm concerned for their Season 2 run. Hopefully they can get it together and be awesome. I mean, there's... But
their synergy fell apart after Stage 1.
And so that's why I have them in the 16th through 20th range. Next up, we've got the Chengdu Hunters.
I said what now? Well, I mean... What'd they finish? 12th? They finished 12th, so I wasn't too far off. Yeah.
Now, the Hunters are, in my opinion, going to be the worst of the 4 Chinese Overwatch League teams, and we'll talk about the other 3 later on. But I just don't think that...
Technically they were, because technically Guangzhou... Yeah, they were the worst of the 4 Chinese teams, technically.
The Hunters have what it takes to really get out of this 16th through 20th range. And I have 2 reasons for that. Again, just like for the Defiant. The first reason is Silk Thread retired. So Silk Thread, who played for both Los Angeles teams in the first season of Overwatch League, was set to be the star player for the Chengdu Hunters, their star DPS.
That's true.
And then he retired last month. I wish him all the best, But unfortunately, that leaves
Playing
the
Apex
Hunters
now.
in a spotty situation here. If you look at their roster on the Overwatch League website, they only have one DPS listed right now. They have a flex in Jinmu, but they have one dedicated DPS player because Silk
The OWL website did not have Jinmu listed as a DPS, fun fact.
It isn't there. I'm sure they're working on signing someone or pulling someone out of contenders, but as of right now, that's not the case. And again, just like with the Defiant, you want to practice for as long as possible. But with the Hunters, how long can this new guy practice with them and get used to it before they jump into the games? Yeah, we're still 2 months away, so we'll see what happens, but I'm just not sold on their DPS line. And the other problem is, aside from Yveltal, they don't really have success at, again, high-level play. Yveltal was a support player for the Chinese World Cup team this year that went to the finals. That's fantastic. But none of these other players have Overwatch League experience.
But they pulled from Miraculous Youngsters, so I don't know what I was talking about here. Did I think they were washed? I bet I thought they were washed.
They're contenders players. Again, maybe they could do well, but I'm just not 100% sold yet, especially when you compare them to the other 3 Chinese teams that we're going to look at later who have had better histories of success than this. So we'll see what happens, but again, gut feeling is that they kind of flounder this season.
So I didn't even talk to the Miraculous Youngster thing, but I think I underestimated the status of those Miraculous Youngster players. I think I underestimated their ability to come back after like those glory days of MY. But on top of that, I guess one thing that I couldn't have foreseen was the fact that Jichiren was stuck in visa limbo. And I kind of wonder, looking back now, knowing that what we know about the way Amen kind of popped off, if Jichiren was there for the whole season, would they have been better in GOATs? And if they were better in GOATs, would Ameng have ever gotten playtime to begin with? And is that good or bad? Because it's like, if they would have popped off in GOATs, maybe they would have just kept playing Jichiren in the second half of the season. And then if that didn't work, would they have just stayed with it throughout the rest of the season and collapsed? Or would they have pulled in Ameng and tried something different? Granted, they didn't make it past the first round of the play-ins anyway with Ameng in. I just kind of wonder like how that season would have played out for them if Jichiren wasn't stuck in visa hell. That's interesting, but I kind of underestimated their innovation and ability to lean on their past success.
Finally, we're taking a look at the Atlanta Reign to close out this bottom
My first truly Pepega take.
Now, I think they have potential, right? I think they've got the players that could pull it all together, but that's if.
Oh, Dogman wasn't even on this roster yet.
Funko is going to be a standout tank this season, especially from the newcomers. But I'm really worried about Defran. Maybe that's not a surprise, right? That's not a surprise, really, because he already said he quit on Twitter, but then he didn't quit.
Yeah.
That's not stability. That's not stable. As it was, he already quit competitive Overwatch once when he was, at the contenders level of play and went to streaming.
Yeah.
Now he's back, and he already almost quit again. I just don't know if he's going to be in a good state of mind throughout the whole season, where he's at the top of his game competitively, where he's focused, where he's trying.
I called
best.
that.
Maybe he'll stay on the team the whole season physically, but will he be there mentally? Will he be there emotionally? Will he be invested in practice? If a player isn't in it, right, even if they're at the keyboard, if they're not passionate for it, then they're not going to carry their team, and that's what they need him to do. They need him to hard carry them. He's a amazing hit scan DPS, but if he doesn't carry them, I don't see them having a great season. And unfortunately, my prediction for this team is based on him, largely on him. So if Defran sticks around and is in a good playing state for the whole season, then they have a shot to do well. But I don't know. So that's why they're at the bottom. I think a lot rides on him. We'll see if he can pull it together. I don't know. So to recap.
Okay, so to talk about Defran, because this one takes some talking about. The thing with Defran was I was right. He didn't last. He didn't make it through past the first stage. I underestimated their ability to bounce back from that because I didn't realize the impact that Sephi had previously with, I believe, the Shock and what he could do with Atlanta. I was a noob to that. I didn't realize the sort of behind the scenes roster building potential that was in Atlanta. So I kind of figured that DeFran would tank. And I know now thinking back, like, I didn't think that Atlanta would be able to bounce back from having DeFran check out. But because they had people like Seffi on their team, they were able to get Baby Bay, who helped fill that gap really, really well. But even with Baby Bay in the lineup, it took a while for him to get acclimated, and it took getting out of GOAT's meta. We were a couple weeks away from Atlanta not being like barely a top 10 team. I mean, they had a huge run at the end of the season, but for 3/4 of the season, they looked like a bottom tier team, or at least a mid tier team at best. So I wasn't ultimately that far off, but they just popped clear off at the end of the season. So I was right about DeFran. I was wrong about their ability or inability that I perceived to fix that going forward. But they did it.
At this bottom quarter of the leaderboard, we've got the Florida Mayhem, Boston Uprising, the Toronto Defiant, the Chengdu Hunters, and the Atlanta Reign.
So I was
These
3
are the
for
5
5.
teams that I think are going to be at the bottom of the leaderboard for Overwatch League season.
I was 3 out of 5.
Moving up to the 15th through 11th teams, we're going to start out with the Houston Outlaws. Now, maybe this
I gotta get my phone for this one. Did they finish
had a
15th
fair
or did they
amount of
finish below?
success in Overwatch League
Where'd they
Season
finish?
1, but I'm a little bit concerned for their tank
Let's see.
and healing play. And part of this is based on the current meta, right? The last time we saw Muma was at the World Cup, and he wasn't doing a fantastic job on main tank, and part of that was just the meta, especially with old.
They finished 16th. So I was wrong in my predictions by one position. If they would have finished one game better, because they had a better map differential than Dallas, if they would have won one more game, they would have been in the top 15.
It was devastating. Hopefully the meta will switch up.
Yeah.
It's supposed to by February. Fingers crossed. But I can only base my predictions on what we've got right now. And what we've got right now is, I think the
Is that
Houston
Raucus on
has
Bastion?
trouble with the tank line. And if the tank line has trouble, their support players, Boink,
Is that Raucus on Roadhog? Anyway.
Bonnie, Raucus, they're not the best support player core. So if your tanks are struggling, that's going to put a lot of strain on your support players.
I still believe
And
all
when
of that.
happens, the team crumbles. Right? I think their DPS are going to be great. They've got Jake, they've got Dante, they've got Linkser.
If only
I
they got
think
to play the
Dante's a
video
huge
game.
Pickup. I think he's going to be awesome for them. But if their support are being stretched thin because of wishy-washy tank play, which again is what they dealt with a lot last season, I just don't think they're going to have a ton of success.
So another thing, I don't think anyone expected the GOATS meta to last for 2.5 stages, basically. So I assumed that the impact of DPS players was going to be greater than it actually ended up being. So people like Linkser and Jake and Dante didn't get the chance to show off because that didn't happen until stage 4. I mean, kind of stage 3, but
while I would love to put them higher because of their DPS play, a lot of it hinges on the other players. Of course, it's a team game, and I'm not so
Instant
sure how
res.
they're going to do.
Old
So
footage.
that's why I put them in this 11th through 15th range. Next up, we've got the Paris Eternal. So I'm
Did I
looking
get that
forward to
one?
watching
Yeah, they finished
them,
14th.
because they're representing Europe with an all-European team, right? That's awesome to me. Big kudos to them. Props to them.
Yeah, kudos
I
to
think
them. They
they're
were the
close to
most
making the
standardly
playoffs, but not quite there.
mediocre
I
team of
would
the year.
see them falling somewhere like 11th or 12th.
Just always mediocre.
Especially because I think Soon and Shadowburn are going to be a great DPS duo. I think they're going to
Again,
synergize
we didn't get to
well.
see DPS.
I think both of them are star players. And aside from being popular, I think this is going to give them a time to shine on the playing field. But again, similar to the Outlaws, it's going to come down to their tank play. And this is where I don't 100% know where to put them because I'm not super familiar with Ben Best and LH Cloudy. From what I can tell,
I didn't
they're
watch a lot of
okay,
contenders.
But are they great? And greatness is what you need to crack the top 10. And
That is the Paris Eternal in a nutshell. Quote, what, they're okay, they're not great.
I'm just not sure that the Paris Eternal are there.
Yeah.
I'd love to be proven wrong. And maybe they will prove me wrong. We'll see. But for right now, I'm thinking they're falling in this 11th through 15th range. Again, that's a gut feeling.
Yeah.
But we'll see. So to close out this 11th through 15th range, we're going to look at the other 3 Chinese teams that I think are going to fall right in the middle of the pack. So we're going to start with the Shanghai Dragons. The infamous
I got that one.
Shanghai
Yeah.
Dragons.
They finished
that,
11th.
Ironically, look nothing like the old team. Well, not nothing like. They've kept a couple of players, but they have changed a lot. The management switched up.
Yeah.
The players are switched up, and I think they have an opportunity to do some cool things. I have my reservations. And that's why they're in the bottom half of the overall standings. But I think they have the opportunity to move up from last up to, 13th or so. That's a huge improvement from season 1.
Yeah.
So what's the deal here? I think Dia and Geguri are better than they got credit for in season 1. I think what happened...
Dia didn't get to play the video game.
All of their problems, but I think a lot of their problem stemmed from the support line just getting picked too often, making terrible plays, having bad positioning, and that made the tank and DPS players look not great.
Yeah.
So I think Geguri and Dia have an opportunity with some new support players to shine a little bit. I mean, these support players, I hate to be rude, but they can't be any worse than they had last season, right? So as long as they're marginally better, I think that the rest of the team is going to have room to shine around them.
And people like Como were more than just marginally better. Como popped through, especially in Stage 3. The whole team popped off in Stage 3. But, yeah, they improved in the healers department.
A big jump from the bottom of the leaderboard, closer to the middle, but not quite enough to crack the top 10. But
yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I would love to see them make some playoff runs. That would be fantastic. I'd be a Shanghai Dragons fan. Next up,
I mean, you gotta admire
Guangzhou
for
Charge.
what they did.
So they picked up Kib, one of those underdog British World Cup team players. I'm super happy to see him in the league, and hopefully he can mesh well with these other...
Also, I'm sorry, to go back to the whole Shanghai thing, I think it's interesting that my biggest thing was on their support line, when I honestly think what Gamsu brought to the team was a really big part of it as well. And of course, I didn't know Gamsu was going to go there when I put this video out, because the trade hadn't happened yet. But I think that the leadership that Gamsu brought made a large difference as well. I don't think that Shanghai, looking back now, I don't think Shanghai would have done nearly as well. I don't think they would have made playoffs if Gamsu wasn't there.
Chinese and Korean players, and you gotta think about that fusion as well. There's a lot of this on the new teams where we've got multiple languages meshing together, and hopefully they do mesh. Hopefully it's not like the Dragons where the Koreans and the Chinese players couldn't communicate, right? Hopefully these teams have gotten it figured out a little bit. Anyway, that's a little asterisk that we have to keep in mind with a lot of these teams. But Kib, looking forward to seeing him play. Hotba, one of the Philadelphia Fusion players that got sent over, looking forward to see him getting some more playing time. I think this team has that stability of at least one Overwatch League player, right, in Hotba. Kib has that World Cup experience, and a lot of these other contenders players could be good, but I just don't know yet. I'm not sure if they're proven just yet. We'll see what happens, but I'm putting them in this 11th through 15th range, probably closer to 14th or 15th, but we'll see.
Yeah.
The Spark, on the other hand, this final team that we're going to talk about,
it's about
Guangzhou
accurate.
Spark, I think they are going
No, they finished
very
9th.
close.
Guangzhou finished 9th. Yeah, they were 2 games off of my prediction. But yeah, I mean, it is another one of those things, like, you couldn't have seen it coming, but
to making a playoff run, maybe 11th or 12th, very close. They're going to be competitive.
Whiffed on this one.
But ultimately, when you look at the top 10 teams that we still have to talk about, I just don't know if they're going to be able to crack that top 10. But I am excited to see what the Hangzhou Spark can do. And this is because when we look at a lot of these expansion teams, the Spark have that combination of experience and synergy. When I say experience, I mean you've got Gushua and Crystal from the 2018 Chinese World Cup team that went to the finals, right? So you've got that experience at the highest level of play, that stability. And then a lot of these players that round out the rest of the team come from X6 Gaming. That means they were teammates, they've played together, and they won the first season of Korean Contenders. X6 Gaming was a successful team even before contenders started. So you've got a lot of longtime players who have worked together and are coming up together. You've got this stable base where they've already been practicing together, and you're plugging in the other puzzle pieces around them. I think that that is a wonderful start for them. Is it enough to crack the top 10? Not quite. But it's definitely enough to be competitive, and a lot of those other teams in the top 10 are going to have to take them seriously and really be on their game when they play them. Of course, you need to be on your game for all of the teams in the league. But the Spark, who knows? Maybe they could even crack the top 10 and really rival some of the best.
Or the top 5.
I'm looking forward to seeing them play, and I'm really looking forward to that first match that they'll play against the Dragons, because one of these two teams is going to walk away being the first Chinese team.
So that was the end of my recap.
It'd be real sad if the Dragons, who had all of first season to do it, it'd be real sad if they didn't pull off the win.
Yeah. Okay. So to talk about Guangzhou and Hangzhou, because I think part of why I didn't rank them any higher was also because I didn't know much about the players on those teams. Guangzhou, I don't feel bad about placing where I did, because it was like they're very much a team that could have gone either way, especially because of the things like their language, potential language barriers. How do I put it? It was another one of those, like, I think my prediction would have been even more off if Goats didn't last as long, because I was playing under the impression that Goats wasn't going to last 3 stages. But if it would have lasted 2 stages or only 1 stage, I think Guangzhou would have done even better, because again, like, their best stages were near the end, because their DPS could actually function. But what I do kind of feel rough about is the Hangzhou Spark, that I didn't rate them any higher, because I don't even know, like, what did I have against X6? X6 is good. Team China was good. I'm looking at the roster, and it's just like, what did I have against them that would have put them in the bottom 10? I don't know. I can't explain that. I cannot explain that one at all. No. Any way I look at it, I can't figure out why I would have thought that, other than just my unfamiliarity with the teams. I guess I probably had an internal bias to put teams that I was more familiar with in the top 10, whereas teams who had a bunch of players I just didn't know, I probably just rated them lower because I didn't know enough about them. I bet that's what it was. But for the most part, I mean, I got Florida right, I got Boston right, I got Toronto. I missed Houston by 1, but I got Paris, Shanghai. I got 5, but I was wrong about Atlanta, Hangzhou, Guangzhou, Chengdu, and I got Paris right as well. So I went 6 and 4. I was right on 6, wrong on 4. But yeah. Overall, I think I did about as well as I could have, given what I knew, given what I didn't know, given that we all didn't know about the meta. I think a lot of my picks were on point, like what I said about Florida. I don't think that was a surprise to anybody. I think a lot of people expected teams like Florida to not do great. When I said, like, Paris is going to be good but not great, I think I kind of nailed that. They were just, like, consistently mediocre. Toronto, I was right about their lack of synergy, because it turned out it was just a lack of any sort of, like, teamwork, synergy, coaching. I was correct on that. Houston, I overrated their DPS, but that's only because they didn't get to play the game. I mean, I think I did okay. So we'll see. I know that I remember I put the Washington Justice at number 10, so I'll be interested to see in the next video why I said that, and kind of where I put those other teams, because I don't really remember. So if you want to see me go through that video, that'll be up hopefully shortly after this one. Sorry if this wasn't high octane content, but this is something I did want to do. Wanted to go back and see what I had to say about each team. I'm going to be doing some actual analyses once we start getting new players, switching teams, once we start adding players. I know there's been a lot of drops recently, a lot of free agents that are looking for new homes. So we're going to analyze some of those as we get into the off season. So stick around. That is something that I do plan on doing. So hopefully I won't be going silent for months again like I did this time. So thank you all for watching. Hopefully going to up the content game. High quality coming soon, or at least higher than just watching a VOD back. So thank you for watching, and stick around. And I'll see you when I recap the top 10 in the next video. Later, guys.